differences today?
Yeah, well, I think it would have been more polite to, but we're okay, I guess.
I agree. I think Jessica should have gone first, actually.
You should go first.
All right. Well, since I'd like to think I'm the youngest in the group, but, I go back to 1994, and our family had bought the old Foxborough Stadium out of bankruptcy in the late 80s, and we were able to get the World Cup here in 1994. And we hosted 6 games here. And it was one of the most impactful things that changed the way I looked at sport, because we had representatives of different African countries, South American countries, and the stadium pulled people from those areas into the stadium. And the stadium had a special karma. And there were people from all over the world celebrating sport, coming together. And it really impacted me in a way that actually has come right to the World Cup of this year and the role our family played in helping to bring it to America. And after that, I always knew I used to take my sons. It was the one day my wife of blessed memory was ecstatic because she got to do the Sunday crossword puzzle and watch chick flicks, and I had the 4 young men, we'd go to watch the Patriots. And, is traditions and happenings and convening of people of all background, it's the only time it happens. And it's so powerful. And I then thought about 9/11, and when for the first time in the history of the NFL, the commissioner postponed games and for a week, and we were playing the New York Jets that week here. And I'll never forget the feeling of everyone in the stands and the player. And the New York Jets are not our favorite up here in New England, for those of you who might not understand the nuance. And they came out of their locker room, and the fans here went nuts cheering them. They were carrying little flags. And then, of course, the Patriots came out. And it was a great game. And during the national anthem, everyone was holding a small flag. And, like our worst enemy in the AFC East, the Jets, were our brothers. And it was really, really special. And there's no other convening that can do that. So when we have really difficult issues, and we think using our crowd and our people to bring things together is so important. Anyhow, I'll let the next go.
Thanks for that, and thank you for inviting me. I shared with you that when you invited me to that convening at the NFL's office, that anytime you invite me somewhere, I will be there. So much of us speaking on behalf of this room are so inspired by what you've done, and you've gone so far above and beyond what any human can do. So thank you for that, and thank you for bringing me along on the journey. In thinking about the question and hearing your answer, I think back to my 16-year-old self being at a New York Islanders game, and the moment when I decided I wanted to be a commissioner of a professional sports league. And it was because of the exact circumstances that you just described. I was sitting next to 2 people who were clearly from different backgrounds and who had never met before. I know this because I was a very precocious 16-year-old and I asked them. And what they told me was that not only were they not friends, they were not even season ticket holders, so they did not sit beside one another at games, but that the reason they were hugging and high-fiving in that moment was because their shared love of the Islanders brought them together. And that was really the defining moment in my life. I think back to that moment. I don't know how or why it affected me the way it did, but from that day forward, I decided I needed to work in an industry that had the power to unite communities, and of course began to learn about Nelson Mandela and so many of the moments in time dating back to the Berlin Olympics and so many other moments where in the face of complete division and despair, it is actually sports that is the one thing in our social fabric that can help people see beyond their own personal or collective challenges. And so I wore this shirt today, pressure is a privilege. One of the many quotes I try to live by, which is that for those of us who work in this industry, we have an incredible responsibility to do the things we can to allow for people to experience happiness and joy. That is what we get to bring to the world that is so challenged and troubled. And this has happened over time, but I think most of us feel like it's never been worse. Maybe that's a product of social media because it's in our face so much, but having had coffee with Jonathan Greenblatt, it's not because of social media. It actually is worse by the ADL's statistics and all the incredible work that you do. So I think of our role in sport as being a place of convening, a place where people can see the humanity in communities that may not otherwise have an opportunity to interact with. And occasionally, when we have real courage, sprinkle in the messaging that can actually either directly or indirectly influence how people think when they leave our spheres of influence, whether it's in our stadiums, in our arenas, or when they're watching on their couches at home. So yeah, I feel privileged to have the responsibility that we have to try to influence how people can be the best versions of themselves.
You know, I might just add, Jessica has done a heck of a job taking a league and evolving it into what it's a real league and the value of the franchises and the sport. She deserves a lot of credit, but since the beginning, she's cared about this issue and feels it should be integrated into what she's doing. And it's a genuine feeling. So thank you for that.
Hi there. I guess I might come from a little different perspective in this world of sports because in the first 10 years of owning the Atlanta Hawks, and I couldn't be more excited, and we thought making the playoffs in 5 of the 10 years. And then I come visit Robert here, and I see his trophies and find out it, of course, get reminded of 10 years, 10 visits to the Super Bowl in 25 seasons, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't own a sports team. So it's but no, I would say in a much more serious perspective, the power of sports teaches us so many things. But one of the great things, not just its influence, not just how it brings folks together, not just how it's remarkably diverse, a pure meritocracy if you think about it, so many positives. But it also doesn't permit, in my view, doesn't permit hate, doesn't have tolerance for hate. If you evidence hate as a ball player in any sport, you're generally kicked off the team, kicked out of the league. That's a positive. As far as I'm concerned, that's a microcosm of what the entire private sector has evidenced as well. If you evidence hate, to me, there should be consequences. Robert described trying to eliminate hate. He's been around longer, has had far more success, but I don't know if we have to or expect to eliminate hate, but we should create real consequences for hate. And organizations like this are able to highlight evidence, and hopefully the private sector, led by the world of sports, should create real consequences, and does. And that's something that I think all of us should be enormously proud of. and reaffirm. And I think most of the sports leagues and franchises and owners and players and unions involved want to reaffirm and reinforce exactly that. So that's something that I think we should all be enormously, enormously comfortable with and proud of and push more aggressively.
Thanks, Tony. Jessica, I want to come back to you. We saw a little while ago the Time Out Against Hate campaign, and you played a critical role in the inception of that campaign. Would love to hear you tell us about why this campaign mattered so much to you personally, building on that seminal moment at 16, and how you and the National Women's Soccer League have turned that vision into something so visible, so impactful today.
I've shared this with Robert and some others. Happy to share it in this room. Well, when I got the call to attend this iconic meeting that had not happened in 100 years, it was a privilege to be invited and to have a seat at the table, but also to be there to listen and learn. Of course, this was following October 7th, and my sort of personal background. I grew up Jewish in a Jewish community with very strong Jewish values, and being invited to that meeting was really a reckoning for me personally. Having been, I think like so many people in this room, whether you're Jewish or not, in the post-October 7 aftermath, had a lot of struggle with how to show up intertwined and representing the values you care about. I would say also my Jewish identity, but really it's with your values, knowing the catastrophe that happened and how complicated the aftermath was. And I would like to think I have courage and am brave in situations like that, but in those months thereafter, I had a really hard time continuing to show up as a proud Jew, and really was not sure what the best way would be to face that down. And that meeting was really a turning point for me personally and professionally, to reaffirm the things that our league stands for, which is inclusion, and there is no tolerance for hate, no matter the source of the hate or who is targeted with the hate. And for me personally, that I decided that I really needed to make a trip to Israel. I went with my mom, who's 79, and we did a volunteer service mission, which was really intended to really just better understand what was going on. And it was very eye-opening for me, and really one of the more life-changing experiences that I've ever had. And so I really owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to you. Actually, my grandmother, may she rest in peace, would thank you if she was alive, because that meeting really ignited in me the need to really face down who I am and what I stand for, and to really confront some of the complexity that so many of us have wrestled with, and of course we continue to wrestle with. But it gave me a sense of purpose and clarity, that reminded me about the choices I made in my life that led me to this position and this career, but also who I am as a person, and all of those things that are the component parts of make me the leader I am today, and that we can't shed the things that define us. Even if you just take one away, you become a different person. And so I know that from all of the DEI work I've done throughout my career, mostly on behalf of other marginalized communities. I've never been in a situation, ironically, where despite the prevalence of anti-Semitism, where I felt like it was targeted at me, I found it a lot easier to advocate for others, and I was always in that role. And I've done tons of trainings during my years at the National Hockey League on the cost of covering who you are, whether you're talking about the LGBTQ community or the Black community. And I very much know and understand the costs of that, and I never really understood what the cost could be to me personally, including the value I bring to the National Women's Soccer League, which I do believe is the pinnacle of what will make people believe that investing in women is smart for business. So there was a real cost to leaving part of my identity outside of my work. And so I went and bought a Jewish Star ring, and I do not take it off. And it's a reminder for me that in order to do the work that I think is so important, not just for Jews, but for society. I need to show up as my holistic self, and in the moments when it's most difficult, really stand behind those values.
That's great. And Robert, Jessica just talked about the value of the importance of being vocal, not hiding who you are, of standing up. That's central to what the Blue Square Alliance calls on people to do, to stand up against anti-Semitism and hate of all kinds. For you as a prominent sports leader and philanthropist, why do you think it's so essential for figures in sports and other domains to not only speak out, but to be visible and really vocal in this fight?
It's interesting, the attention span. Sorry. The attention span of people today is so limited, and in my life, seeing what's happened in today's world and the role of social media and how people can do and say things, and it's become so impactful, and there's no regulation on the truth there. And I really believe a lot of the issues we're dealing with at a high level are social media related. And actually, the Blue Square Alliance is going to do some things in Washington to try to put some limits. That 230 bill that's in other over-the-air, we want to bring that to that so that we can't spread the ill will. But the thing is, when you see sports figures, I mean, whether they deserve it or not, they have the followings. I mean, to get people to focus on issues or attention, I saw that when my wife and I led the March of the Living to Poland with 10,000 people between Auschwitz and Birkenau. And right before that, Kanye West, who's not an athlete, but in that special category of entertainer, he denied the Holocaust. So I decided to get a friend, Meek Mill, who's a rapper, to come to downtown Krakow and see these two. And he did. And he came to me after seeing the women's scalps in a room, 45,000 scalps, and the baby shoes. And he had a tear in his eye, and he said, "Robert, I thought the worst place in the world was the ghetto in North Philadelphia where I grew up, but what the Jewish people experienced here." And he went out and texted, and he got a lot of backlash from young people who were followers. "Oh, you sold out to the white billionaire," I don't know if that's accurate, but and it showed him something and educated him. And so when Tom Brady wears the blue square, I mean, we had the reception out here for him. We have a statue for those of you who are Brady fans, and especially for the women here who like handsome men. It's pretty cool. And he wore the blue square when we unveiled it. And, it became such a topic, and it brought it around to this hate and anti-Semitism. So that really entertainers, but sports athletes can do more to bring attention to the problems we care about because they have the audience.
And I think
Were we not going to play?
And I think we have, as an example of what Tom's done, I think we have that campaign to show as well.
I hate you because we're from different neighborhoods.
I hate you because you look different.
I hate you because I don't understand you.
I hate you because people I know hate you.
I hate you because I think you hate me.
Because I need someone to blame.
Because you talk different.
Because you act different.
Because you're just different. that things are so bad that we have to do a commercial about it.
Me too.
So both of them agreed to do that, you know, not for an appearance fee. They did it because they both care. And, you know, the discussions and issues that came out of that were so positive. That was an ad that we purchased and ran in the Super Bowl. So
Tony, Robert talked a lot about individual athletes exhibiting leadership on this topic. The Atlanta Hawks have been a franchise that continues to lead with purpose in many domains: youth programs, voting, healthcare, economic empowerment, many others. Would love to share more for this audience how the organization has been driving meaningful change in the community, not only the Atlanta community, but more broadly the NBA community.
Well, again, when you own a sports franchise, whether you like it or not, you own a community asset, and how you operate in that community will dictate a great deal of the success I think you'll have. One example I think was we had, particularly close to our arena as an example, we had real problems in voting. And strangely enough, not to many in this room, I bet, but we had 2 and 3 and 4 hour wait times in poor neighborhoods in Atlanta to vote. And we thought we could change that by making the State Farm Arena the largest voting center in the state of Georgia, and reduce wait times from 3 hours to 15 minutes. And that led to, I think, 20 other stadiums and arenas becoming voting locations in their respective neighborhoods. So you could have an impact. It's just one example of the power of sports in a community. And there are many examples that you could do. We have a million person, we put out a million free meals for the community, literally in packs, in food packs. So the idea of creating and highlighting food insecurity in a community that should have that subject highlighted. And by the way, I keep coming back to, because of course it's the purpose of today, but highlighting hate. The sports leagues have done a great job, and I think could do so much more. I mean, as an example, and I'm not trying to shit on Van on this, but on the, in the media, if you think about the media today, and Van is one of the great advisors to be on this subject, by the way, but they're highlighting, is anti-Semitism worse from the right or from the left? And I'm like, who gives a shit about that debate? We should, hate is hate. So sports leagues have an ability to highlight sports franchises, sports athletes with a voice, have an ability to highlight what's the difference, whether it's coming more from the left or from the right. Hate is hate, and there should be consequences for hate. And I do believe the world of sports is going to highlight that very issue. I believe this particular organization is highlighting that particular issue, as an example.
You know, I might like to just say for this audience.
Sorry,
too,
man, I had to go after you on that one. Sorry, Robert.
No, he's unique. But for those of you who might not know, we're so honored to have Tony with us here today. He's one of the top businessmen in the country, what he has built with ours, and then taken over, the NBA team. He's a fervent fan and feels things very strongly and thinks big and wants to do good for the world. So for him to fly here and be with us today is really meaningful. Thank you.
And we just have a few more minutes. Before I ask the final question, I want to reflect back on themes that I've heard so far, which is, we talk about the platform that sports have, but I think what I've heard a few times over is thinking really broadly and creatively about the assets that sports franchises have, whether it be the stadium, the brand, the relationships, the players. All of these things can be deployed in the fight against hate. And the other theme that I want to make sure that we take a minute to process is the responsibility. It's not just an opportunity, it's a burden. It's a responsibility. It's a responsibility to the community. It's a responsibility to the broader fan base. I think the three of you exemplify that better than just about anybody in this country. And I think that's an important thing for everybody to take home, is this is the responsibility working in this world of sports to be able to use that in ways that are bettering the community and bettering the country. So the last question, and Tony, I'll start with you on this one. If there's one specific action that you want everybody in this room to take starting today, what would that one action be?
Oof, that's a tough one. I do think the most obvious is to amplify your voice, but in this particular crowd, I would say having sports leagues and different sports working more in unison on this particular issue. How do we get the sports world to be a little bit more unified in going after this issue of hate, which I think, as Robert said, and as hopefully everyone in this room would agree, has become a much bigger issue in this country than most any of us have seen in our lifetime. So a more unified sports world, speaking sometimes in a more connected way, would be my, that everyone in this room could probably push towards.
I think drowning out some of the hate with more positive messaging, as people want to have something to talk about, giving them more positive stories to talk about and finding more voices to amplify those positive stories through different platforms and channels. Riffing on some of what you were talking about, we actually, the National Women's Soccer League, we announced this morning that we launched a first-of-its-kind advisory board of investors across all of our teams who are celebrities, influencers, and athletes. People like Chris Paul and Alex Morgan and Grant Hill and Elizabeth Banks and Allie Raceman and Ken Griffey Jr., and the list goes on. It's a shadow board of advisors to our governing board. And the unique part about this is not just that they have incredible influence in the collective. I think the headline of the article this morning said this sounds like the Avengers. But they're the Avengers for good. And these are people who have incentive alignment to grow their investment, their asset, which is their investment in our league and our teams, but want to evangelize what is great about professional women's soccer and make those positive messages more pervasive and things that people are focused on. Because in the absence of positive stories and positive messages, people will revert to their worst place, and I think that's a lot of what we're seeing today.
Just to pile on real quick to what Jessica just described, people have written so much and spoken so much about the problems of half a dozen, 2 dozen U.S. colleges and what's permitted on campus. When you could look at what's gone on at the University of Georgia, University of Tennessee, University of Arizona, Georgia Tech, there was no hate on campus, and there was consequences for it. So there are so many good stories in the university world not permitting hate, and you don't hear and read as much about them. And for that, I don't quite understand, but I agree with you completely.
Let's back to the media, Van. Robert, can you bring us home? What's one action you want everybody in this room to do starting today?
Well, you know, everyone is here. We're all here for the same reason, because of what is bothering us, and we want to do something and educate ourselves what we can do. And we have to find a way to integrate everything as if we're one team, really with the right end game. And we're not competitors, we're allies. And how we do that, I really ask everyone in this room, whatever the personal ego needs are, that we subjugate that to what the big picture is. And, you know, in the end, and it's how it was in our vision of how when we started this, the blue square, everybody's so busy every day. Everybody's doing things and caught up in their own world. When you're wearing that blue square, or give it to people to wear, it just makes people stop and think about pushing back on hate and focusing on love and bridge building. And that's, everyone's so busy, and we got family issues, we got personal issues. We want our teams to win, which isn't easy, and it's horrible when they don't, believe me. So we're driven to do whatever we can do. But this problem, I'll tell you, in my lifetime, I've never seen anything that can undermine what's so great about this country. And it needs people who care about it constantly. And I think passing out blue squares and keeping this blue square visible, I'm hoping 5 to 10 years from now we have hundreds of millions of people wearing it, just as a reminder to push back and preach love and not hate. And once again, thank you all for being here.
And please, big round of applause for these fantastic panelists. Thank you again, Jessica, Tony, Robert. As you all can go back to your seats as we're transitioning to the next panel. I think we heard a lot of great things, and just to recap the last few comments about, I think we heard coordination, unity, and positivity. How, I'd love everybody to think about, jot down some notes, talk to the person next to you. What is something you can do starting tomorrow you can bring back to your organization to further those goals? I think there's so many ideas that we are generating